Imagine a room full of people losing their minds over a score. Everyone is on their feet. Someone is crying. Someone else is screaming at the ceiling. And you're sitting there completely still watching them. Not the game. Not because you're cold. Not because you're broken. But because something inside you never got the signal that this was supposed to matter. And the strangest part, you've wondered about that your whole life. You know what it feels like to sit at a dinner table while everyone argues about last night's match and feel like you're watching a movie in a language you were never taught. You nod. You smile at the right moments. You even Google the score once so you have something to say. But inside, there is nothing. Not anger. Not judgment. Just a quiet kind of absence. And the question that follows that absence, the one you've never quite said out loud, is this: why does everyone else feel something I simply don't? Here's what's interesting. Those thousands of people in that stadium, their brains are doing something real, something measurable. When their team scores, dopamine floods the same circuits that fire when they themselves achieve something. The brain does not distinguish between winning and watching your team win.to. The nervous system, it's the same event. That's not passion. That's not loyalty. That is neuroscience. And you might think, okay, so I just don't have that response. But that's not quite right either, because your brain has the same circuits. The difference isn't the hardware. The difference is what the hardware got trained on. Psychologists call this identity fusion, the process by which the brain merges your sense of self with something outside of you. A team, a nation, a school, a religion. This fusion doesn't happen by choice. It happens through repetition, through emotion, through the adults around you when you were young. If a father watched every match with his hand on your shoulder, if every celebration in your house was tied to a jersey, your brain learned to treat that team's survival as your own. But if that didn't happen, if no one handed you that thread, the circuit never closed. And a circuit that never closes doesn't fire. Think back to when you were a child. Where did your intensity go? Not intensity for sports, just intensity. That raw, alive thing children have before the world tells them what to do with it. For some children, it went toward a ball on a field. For others, it went somewhere quieter, into books, into music, into questions that had no easy answers. Your brain was never less hungry. I was just hungry for something different. And here is the part that changes everything. Neuroscientists have found that people who don't bond with external spectacle often show higher baseline activity in what's called the default mode network. This is the brain's inward-facing system. It activates when you reflect, when you imagine, when you process meaning. It's the network that runs when you're lost in a conversation at 2 a.m., when you're reading something that feels like someone reached inside your chest and found the exact thing you'd been carrying, when you're completely alone and somehow feel completely alive. But here is the part no one talks about. Having a strong inward-facing brain in a world built around outward-facing rituals creates a very specific kind of pain. Not dramatic pain. Not the kind anyone notices. Just the quiet, daily ache of being somewhere that wasn't quite built for you. Of spending years at tables where everyone is fluent in a language you can hear but cannot speak. Of wondering not whether you're wrong, but whether you're somehow less. You're not less, but you're not more either. And the moment you make your indifference into superiority, the moment you quietly decide that people who care about sport are shallow, you've just built yourself a different kind of cage. Because here's what the research actually shows. Every group, ritual, sports, religion, politics exists to solve one human problem: the terror of being a self alone in a confusing world. People don't obsess over football because they're simple. They obsess because belonging feels like safety, and the brain will take safety wherever it can find it. When you understand that when you watch someone scream at a screen and you see the child in them who just needed to be part of something, the distance between you and them closes. Not because you now care about the score, but because you finally understand what the score was always about. So what do you do with all of this? Not to fix yourself. There is nothing to fix, but to live less against your own wiring. The first thing, stop performing. Every time you fake enthusiasm you don't feel, your brain registers a conflict between who you are and what you're expressing. Psychologist Arlie Hochschild called this surface acting, and decades of research show it slowly erodes your sense of self. You don't have to announce your indifference, but you don't have to pretend either. A simple, warm, "Sport's not really my thing. What else is going on with you?" moves you from exhausting performance into honest connection. And most people, if they're decent, will follow you there. The second thing is to find what does to you what sport does to them. Not a concept, Not a metaphor. A specific place, a specific activity, a specific kind of person where your nervous system wakes up completely, where time disappears, where you feel part of something larger than yourself, because your brain still needs that feeling. The part of you built for collective experience doesn't disappear just because football doesn't trigger it. It sits quietly, waiting, and if you don't feed it intentionally, it starts feeding in isolation instead. The third thing, be curious about what you don't feel, not ashamed of it. Your indifference to sport is data, not damage. It tells you something about how your brain routes reward, about what your nervous system decided mattered before you had any say in the matter. That data points somewhere. Follow it. Because people like you tend to find connection in stranger, quieter places. In a documentary watched alone at midnight that rearranges something inside you. In a sentence in a book that feels like it was written specifically for you. In a 3-hour conversation with someone you just met who thinks the exact way you think. These are not lesser versions of what happens in a stadium. They are the same neurology, different address. The crowd feels something together for 90 minutes. You feel something alone or with one or two people that stays with you for years. Not every brain is built for collective noise. Some are built for depth instead of width, for the conversation after the party ends, for the idea that won't leave you alone, for the kind of connection that doesn't need a scoreboard to know that something real just happened. You are not missing the game. You are playing a different 1.1 with fewer spectators, longer seasons, and no one is keeping score but you. The people who share your frequency exist. They are somewhere right now, also wondering why the world feels louder than it needs to be. Also building something quietly. Also waiting for the conversation that finally goes somewhere real. You will find them. Not in the stadium, but somewhere. And when you do, you won't need to explain a single thing.